everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel CrackZat Turning Problems into Solutions. This is me Priyasha Das, and today in this video we'll be specifically dealing with the strengthening the argument type questions under the critical reasoning section. In my previous video on critical reasoning, I dealt with the various concepts, the general ones which we can apply in all the critical reasoning questions, and I also took up the types of critical reasoning questions. Now in this video I'll be specifically taking up two examples. The first example will be from the GMAT previous year paper and the second example will be from the XAT previous year paper. Both are dealing with the strengthening of the argument so that we get a quick grasp over how to deal with the questions when it comes to strengthen the argument. Moreover, it also makes a very important role in the RCs, because in the RCs also we see that the strengthening the argument, weakening the argument kind of questions are always a part of any one of the RCs which you take up. Now, before I get started with the examples, I just want to tell you that a bit of vocabulary is needed in the critical reasoning questions. Doesn't mean that all the words should be known to you. It only means that when the author wants you to find out the argument or the line or the option which strengthens the existing argument, they can also offer it in different ways. Like the question can come up as which of the following options bolsters the argument. Bolster means support, and support means strengthen the argument. So that means they are asking you to strengthen the argument only. Similarly, in line with the argument or statements like that are essentially the same thing as strengthening the argument. So let's get started with the first example. This is a previous GMAT question. So let's see how to solve it. What is the policy advisor saying? The policy advisor is saying that freedom of speech is not only a human basic right, like basic human right, it is also the only rational policy for this government to adopt. Now, why this is the actual argument? You need to find out what the author's argument is. So the author's argument is that it is not only a human right, but it should also be adopted by the government. Why is what he supports further, that when ideas are openly aired, good ideas flourish, silly proposals are easily recognized as such, and dangerous ideas can be responded to by forcing the citizens to disseminate their thoughts in secret. All right, this is just an extension to the idea which is already proposed in the first line. Now, what is the idea in the first line? The real argument of the author. And what are we supposed to do in the question? Find out which of the following, if true, would strengthen the argument. So when I say strengthen the argument, I'm actually going to search for an example, or I can say a supporting line which would support the fact that freedom of speech is a human right and should be adopted by the governments. Why it should be adopted by the government can be my assumption. Now, if you remember my previous video, I told you that we cannot change the facts. We can only decide the conclusion depending upon the unstated assumption. So the unstated assumption can be anything, but it should be in line with what my facts are saying or my argument is. So let's see the first option. You know, the most critical part in this critical reasoning is to eliminate the options. Because if you are able to filter out the options, it would be much easier for us to go through these questions. Rather than understanding each and every line in detail, we should focus on getting into eliminating the options, which will make our job easier. And ultimately, we have to score good. So we need to see which method actually makes us score good, right? So let's go with the first option. Most citizens would tolerate some limit of freedom of speech. Why will they tolerate at all? When the author is telling that it is a human right and the government should adopt it, what's the sense of tolerating? Now, this is the point which would come up as out of scope. So that's an essential thing to learn here. Out of scope. Many options, around one or two options, would definitely be out of the scope of the argument, not in line with the argument. So here, people tolerating freedom of speech is out of the scope. We don't need it at all. Similarly, if you go to option B and read it, with or without a policy of freedom of speech, governments respond to dangerous ideas irrationally. Now, this is not out of the scope. This is actually against what I am or what the author is speaking. The author is saying that if we take up freedom of speech, then only the government would respond to the wrong ideas or dangerous ideas. But what the option B is saying, that even if the government doesn't allow the freedom of speech, it has its own ways to deal with the dangerous ideas. That is not strengthening our argument, going against our argument. So therefore option B also eliminated. Now we'll read option C. Freedom of religion and freedom of assembly are also basic human rights that the governments must recognize. Why? This is the question which comes to everyone's head. Why are we talking about religion and assembly when the argument is all about speech? This is again an example of out of scope. Going out of the scope of the argument is option C. So option C is also eliminated based on this. Let's read option D. Governments are less likely to be overthrown if they openly adopt a policy allowing freedom of speech. Now, please pay your utmost attention over here. Government is adopting freedom of speech. This is what is mentioned in the first line also, that governments should adopt this. Okay, now what is that unstated assumption which I was talking about in the beginning? The unstated assumption is this: what is the benefit of the government if they adopt this policy? This can be one of the unstated assumptions. This can be one of the benefits of the government, that if they adopt this policy, so they will be less likely to be overthrown. Somewhere in line with my argument, isn't it? Let's keep this option on hold and let's read option E to finalize our answer. Great ideas have flourished in the societies that repress, excuse me, repress is a negative word, that repress free speech as often as in those that permit it. Oh, please, this is exactly the opposite of what we are talking about. Not strengthening, rather degrading. So therefore option E is completely opposite because it is talking about repressing the free speech. So option E is also not our answer, and we are therefore finalizing option D as our correct answer, because this is actually in line with what the policy advisor or the author of this argument is saying. And it also gives you an unstated assumption that why are the governments going to adopt this? Because they will be less likely to be overthrown. So this is the process how we use option elimination to get through these questions much faster. Now, let's quickly go down and check the previous year's XAT paper with a strengthening type CR question. You see, this is the beauty of XAT examination. They give you only 2 lines. Max to max 2 to 3 lines, and you have to understand the world out of it from these 2 lines only. This is actually not easy, because when we have lots of sentences, it becomes easier with the help of examples and certain supporting sentences to understand the premises. But when we have only 2 lines, it's all about the understanding of the author and the understanding of the reader. Let's read this question quickly. It is sometimes mooted. Okay. Now, I am pretty sure some people might be confused with the word mooted. Mooted is nothing but discussed. So it is sometimes discussed that there can be democracy in a two-party system. So we are discussing about democracy in a two-party system where there are only two parties existing. That would be correct if politics were a game like cricket or football, but politics is not sports. Please understand, this is critical reasoning with logical connectivity. I'll be coming up with another video in my LR section where it's a very, very major section of verbal ability or verbal reasoning, which is called as logical connectives. Very interesting, very easy also if you understand how to do it. Otherwise, if you just go blank in an exam, it might be confusing to you. Anyways, coming back to the question. But politics is not sports. That means this would have been correct or this would have been good if politics was a sport. What would have been good? Democracy in a two-party system. So you have to go backtracking, use the backtracking skills. So if you want to note, you can note it down that this process is called as backtracking, and we are going to read the question the other way round, or from the end towards the first part, to understand what the author wanted to say. The author wanted to say that democracy in a two-party system is getting discussed. This topic is being discussed. But what do the author thinks of? He thinks that it would be correct, like democracy in the two-party system would be good if politics was a game, but alas, it's not a game. You see the last line. That means two-party system is not good. Please understand. This is the only learning from here, that this is not good. All right. Now let's see the option which strengthens this argument. So again, we'll be going up by option elimination because it's the key to success. Let's see option A. The two-party system functions well. Come on, it does not functions well. That is what is being mentioned, and that is what is we understand from the backtracking method, that politics is not a sport, therefore it will not be a good two-party system. So option A straight away eliminated. Politics is a dirty game. Now here we actually are giving a judgment. Here politics is a dirty game is a judgment, but we don't have to give a judgment to strengthen the argument. This is something which we need to learn from this example, that in other questions also, if you get a judgment, please don't select the answer, because judgments can never support the arguments. Judgment can never support the argument. Coming to option C, two political parties limit the choice of the voters. Now, this is a negative sentence if you understand. Limiting the choice of the voters is not providing democracy, and not providing democracy is what exactly is being spoken of in these two lines. That sports, actually, if politics would have been sports, then it would have supported two-party system democracy, but alas, it is not. That means it does not support democracy. So that is what is mentioned in option C, that two political parties limit the choice of the voters. That means does not provide democracy. Democracy is missing in this. Limits means missing. So that means option C will be our final answer, pertaining to the fact that none of these is given, so none of these cannot be the answer. So therefore, two political parties limit the choice of the voters is what we take up as a strengthening argument in the second example. So in both the examples, we learned how to deal with the strengthening argument questions. I'll be up with more videos where I'll be specifically talking about weakening the arguments, inference, etc. So stay tuned with the channel and make sure you check the playlist up there so that you are updated with all the critical reasoning and verbal section questions coming or updated daily. If you like this video, please share it with your friends, like this video, and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. And this is what I'll be doing in all my videos. I'll be taking up examples in detail, explaining you how to deal with these questions. After watching these videos, please try to solve one or two questions on your own and let me know in the comment section if you liked it. So until we meet again, please take care and thanks for watching.